Welcome back, Pauls. Let's see why Mrs. Auburn behaved so strangely. Let's go straightly to the chapter. It's chapter 3 Strange Guardians. Nancy was almost certain now that she and Helen has met the unpleasant Mrs. Auburn the night before. The women's quarrelsome mood has extended to Laura. Aloud, Helen said, "But don't forget it's no fun to have car trouble on a bad night. That's apt to make anyone cross." "I suppose so," Laura conceded. "How was Mrs. Auburn this morning?" Nancy asked. Laura's face brightened somewhat as she admitted that the woman has been pleasant and charming. Mrs. Auburn apologized for her actions last night and said both she and her husband could hardly wait for me to come and live with them. "I see," said Nancy, but with inward reservations. "I guess I'm being foolish to worry." Laura smiled. Mrs. Auburn did say she had met Mother only once, so that could explain the name mix-up. "Where is Mr. Auburn?" Helen asked. "He's arriving after lunch today. He was detained on business." Nancy was puzzled. The Auburn's behavior was unusual and thoughtless, she felt. "Mrs. Auburn is having her hair set at the beauty parlor in the hotel," Laura explained. "She suggested that I take a taxi here this morning if I felt I had to see you too, which I insisted I did," Laura said grimly cheerfully. Suddenly Nancy smiled. "I'm starved." She asked Laura to have a second breakfast with her and Helen in the motel restaurant. And afterward, Helen went on. "Let's ask Marty Mellon, the girl we met yesterday, Nancy, to make a foursome in tennis." "Great," said Laura to both suggestions. When the three girls stepped outside, Nancy took a deep breath of air. She loved the earthly smell of the forest surrounding the lake resort, particularly the scent of the tall pines. "What a day," she explained. Only a few fleecy white clouds broke the clear blue sky. "The weatherman must be on our side," Helen chuckled. A little later, Nancy lent Laura tennis clothes and the girls went to meet Marty Mellon. Soon the four were playing a lively set on the courts located behind the motel. Laura and Nancy, who were partners, won. Helen and Marty took the second set. "You're a terrific player, Nancy," Laura exclaimed as she scored a point during set 3. "Thanks," Nancy said as she changed courts for service. "Where did you learn to play so well?" "Private lessons?" Laura grimaced. At boarding school, Mother insisted before her illness she was a great sportsman. When Nancy and Laura had won the third set, Laura called for a timeout. "I must go to the hotel now," she said. "It's almost noon." After Laura had changed her clothes, Nancy offered to drive her to the hotel. The three girls piled into the Nancy's blue convertible. 10 minutes later, they drew up in front of the spacious Montevora Hotel. It was several stories high and stood a long distance back from the main road. In front stretched a green lawn bordered by beds of multicolored gladioli, dasilish, and giant asters. "It's beautiful," Nancy commented as Laura stepped from the car. Helen pointed to an attractive outdoor swimming pool to the right of the hotel. It was filled with bathers. Laura said that there was almost a riding table behind the Montevago. "There's a lot of families here," Laura said wistfully. "I wish I could stay." Then hastily she thanked Nancy for driving her over. "I love doing it," Nancy replied. "I hope we see each other again, Laura." "So do I," Helen added. Laura snapped her fingers. "I have a wonderful idea. Why don't you girls come back around 3 o'clock? You can meet my guardians, and if there is time, we can join the other young people at a tea dance scheduled for 4. "Fine," Nancy said at once. "Come directly to my room." Laura waved goodbye. Nancy detected a worried expression on Laura's face and knew she hated the thoughts of meeting a strange new guardian. The young sleuth was so quiet on the return trip that Helen asked, "Penny for your thoughts, Nancy?" Her friend smiled. "I've concluded that the Pendletons must have been wealthy." "What gives you that idea?" "It's very expensive to live year-round in New York hotels where Laura lived, and she almost mentioned boarding school." In addition, Nancy enumerated, "Laura's clothes have the simple but expensive look. You know what I mean." "Yes," said Helen. "Well, if you're right, Mr. Auburn will control a great deal of money while he's managing Laura's affairs." "In the case of a minor," said Nancy, "an inheritance is held in trust until she is 21, Dad says. That's 5 years from Mr. Auburn. I hope he'll be a wise guardian." She turned onto Lakeview Lane, a long straight road bordered by woods. There were no homes along the way, but a sign ahead advertised Sterling's real estate office. Suddenly, Nancy stopped. "I think I'll run in here for a few minutes," she said, "and ask whose owner the bungalow we helped ourselves to." She walked into the office, introduced herself to Mr. Sterling, an elderly man, and told him the purpose of her call. The latter grinned. "Any port in the storm is all right, I'm sure." He said that the bungalow was owned by one of his clients. He had rented it a week before to a Mrs. Frank Marshall from Pittsburgh. "I guess she picked up the second floor." Mr. Sterling added. She and her husband plan to use the place weekends. I'll pass the word along to Mrs. Marshall that you were there. I left a note but didn't sign it, Nancy said. Perhaps sometimes I'll stop in person and thank the Marshalls. Returning to the car, she told Helen what she has learned. Just for fun, let's go out to the bungalow now. A quarter of a mile farther on, Nancy made a right-hand turn which brought them onto the lake drive. Below them, the girls could see the bungalow they have visited. Suddenly, a black foreign car pulled out of the lane that led down to the bungalow. Gaining speed, the automobile came towards Nancy's convertible. Watch out! Helen yelled, jerking to the attention as the wheels passed and nearly sidewhipped them. Nancy slowed down and stopped. She looked back at the car, which was almost out of sight. Some drivers don't deserve a license, she said. Do you suppose that was Mr. Marshall? Helen shrugged. He wore a straw hat pulled low over his forehead. All I could see was the sleeve of his tan and white jacket. That's quite a bit, Nancy teased in so short time. Helen laughed. Close association with you in making me more observant, she said. When the girls reached the Pinecrest Motel, Helen exclaimed, There's Aunt June! While Nancy parked, the dark-haired girl slipped from the convertible and hurried to the porch outside the room they occupied. Hello, Helen dear, the slim, stylish-dressed woman with softly waved black hair smiled at her niece. Helen returned the greetings and gave her father's young sister a kiss. When did you arrive? She asked. Have you been waiting along? No, I got here half an hour ago. The attractive-looking woman was a buyer from a River Heights department store. She told Helen of a retailing problem which had prevented her departure with the girls, then turned to greet Nancy with enthusiasm. Isn't this a lovely spot? Nancy remarked, and Aunt June Coring agreed that the view of the lake was superb. After learning that Aunt June had not had lunch, the three went into the tea room. When they had given their order, Miss Corning said, I have some slightly bad news for you, Nancy. What happened? Well, just before I left River Heights, I phoned your housekeeper to see if she had any messages for you. To my surprise, Dr. Darby answered. He said that Mrs. Gren has sprained her ankle early this morning and she must not walk for a couple of days. I'll call Dad right away and talk to him, said Nancy with concern. Wait, Aunt June said. Dr. Darby mentioned that your father has left on a business trip today before the accident occurred. That means Hannah is all alone, Nancy said risingly. I'll have to go home at once. Will you both excuse me for a minute, please? She went to a telephone booth and dialed the Drew's next-door neighbor, Mrs. Glenson. Nancy was relieved to hear that the woman's sister was taking care of Hannah for the afternoon. The housekeeper was in no pain and resting comfortably. The young sleuth did some rapid thinking. If she left for River Heights late that afternoon, she could still fulfill her promise to Laura to meet her guardian and arrive home in time to cook Hannah's supper. Will you please tell Mrs. Gren I'll see her at 6 o'clock? Nancy requested, and Mrs. Glenson agreed to do this. When Nancy returned to the others, Helen was telling her aunt of the adventure on the lake and Laura's Pendleton story. How dreadful for the girl, exclaimed Miss Corning. I feel very sorry for her. Nancy now told of her plans to return home, and although Helen and her aunt were disappointed, but they agreed that it was the right thing to do. But before I leave, said Nancy, I want to meet Mr. and Mrs. Osborne. After lunch, Nancy packed her suitcase, put it in the car, and paid her motel bill. Soon it was time for her and Helen to leave the Motorburger Hotel. Are you sure you won't accompany us, Aunt June? Asked Helen. Miss Corning shook her head. I'm a little tired, she said, and besides, I must unpack. A short while later, the two girls entered the Motorburger lobby. Nancy made her way directly to the desk, and after a brief wait, was informed that Miss Pendleton would receive the girls in a suite. An elevator took them to the third floor. Scarcely had they knocked on the door when Laura opened it. Oh, I am so glad you came, she cried out, smiling with relief. Laura led the girls into a well-appointed living room with a bedroom on either side. As Nancy stepped inside, she saw a man and a woman seated in chairs near a picture window. In a glance, Nancy realized that she and Helen had been right about Mrs. Osborne being the woman they had met the night before. Right now, she looked most friendly. Jacob Osborne arose and smiled graciously. He was a well-built, somewhat stocky man in his early 50s. His face was square and his small brown eyes were shifty. When Laura introduced the girls, Mrs. Osborne rushed towards them. Darlings, she said, giving Helen and Nancy a butterfly peck on their cheeks. You'd been so good to poor Laura. Perfect bricks, Mr. Osborne said gruffly. He extended a hand first to Nancy, then to Helen. The reason I'm late in getting Laura is that I wanted everything to be perfect for her arrival at our Melrose Lake house. Nancy was sure Mrs. Osborne recognized the callers and was embarrassed to admit it. They said nothing. There was an awkward silence until Laura said, Well, let's all sit down. For a few minutes, everyone chatted generally, then Helen asked, "When are you leaving, Mr. Auburn?" "In half an hour," was the reply. "Laura is tired and I want to get her settled before supper time." Mrs. Auburn broke in. "Yes, the poor girl needs a lot of rest and good care." Laura Pendleton seemed annoyed to be treated as a child and as an invalid. "I'm fine," she stated defiantly. Turning to Nancy, she said quietly, "I'm afraid that we can't attend the hotel tea dance." "That's all right," Nancy replied. She told of Hannah's accident and the fact that she must soon head for home. "Are you all packed, Laura?" Mr. Auburn asked. "Yes, except to get mother's jewelry from the hotel safe." "I'll do that for you, dear," Mrs. Auburn voluntarily rising. She smoothed her skirts restlessly. Laura said, "Thank you, but I must present the receipt in person." She excused herself, saying she would be right back. As Laura left the suite, Mr. Auburn turned to the two guests. "I wish Mary Pendleton had been a little more cautious with the inheritance from her husband," he confided. "What do you mean?" Nancy asked. "Laura is practically penniless," her guardian explained. "Mrs. Pendleton illness and the way she lived took almost all her funds." Nancy and Helen were surprised and dismayed to hear this. "It doesn't matter though," Mrs. Auburn said. "We have an ample means to provide for Laura. She'll have everything she needs." Nancy was confused by the woman's seemingly dual personality. She could be crude as on the evening before or sweet as appeared now. Perhaps at heart she meant well. Nancy hoped so for Laura's sake, but a strange feeling of distrust persisted. When Laura returned, Helen and Nancy said they must be on their way. Their friends shook hands. "We never can thank you enough, Laura, for coming to our rescue yesterday," Helen said gratefully. "That's right," Nancy agreed. "If you hadn't come along at that moment, we would probably be at the bottom of the lake." Laura shuddered. "Oh, I'm sure you would have reached shore some way, but I'm glad I could help and it's been such fun knowing you. I hope you'll come to see me while I'm at Melsora Lake." "We will," Nancy promised. "What's your address there?" "Anyone can direct you to my house," Mr. Auburn said heartily. "It's a well known in that section." His wife tapped her foot on the floor. "Jacob, it's getting late," she hinted. Nancy and Helen hastily bade on the Auburns goodbye and walked towards the door of the suite with Laura. Suddenly, Helen turned around. "It's lucky you bought 2 cars," she called back. Laura had a lot of luggage. Without another word, Helen gave Laura a quick kiss and walked into the corridor. Nancy followed a moment later. "Why did you say that?" Nancy questioned Helen as she rode down in the elevator. The dark-haired girl signaled for silence. There were several other people in the car. When they stepped out into the lobby, Nancy repeated her question. Helen grabbed her chum's arm excitedly. "I couldn't resist it," she exclaimed. "Jacob Auburn was the driver in the tan and white sports jacket I saw coming out of the road by the bungalow this morning." "The driver of the black foreign car?" "Who was Jacob Auburn, the one who drove that black foreign car?" Stay tuned for the next chapter, guys. Have a happy day.